Emma, I'm seeing your presenter view, so I can see the notes. I'm still seeing the same. Ah, there we go. Okay, I think folks, we'll leave it for another 30 seconds or so while we wait for others to join. I think we're expecting a few more to come into the room, so we'll just wait another 30 seconds to a minute. Okay, I think we'll get going. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Outscape training event on the GreenspaceNI Map. This is the advanced training session, so we've already run the beginner session. So this advanced session is aimed to help you make the most of the GreenspaceNI Map in your organisation using ArcGIS Online and ArcPro. So today, taking you through the training will be myself, but then I'm actually going to hand over to Emma Taylor and John Hewitt, who are going to do lots of the heavy lifting around explaining to you how to use this within ArcGIS Online and ArcPro. My name is Elizabeth Annett. I am a communication and training specialist with Outscape. Emma, if we can move on to housekeeping, that would be brilliant. Thank you. So just to help with the smooth running of today's event, just a few housekeeping rules. So we're going to record this event and it'll be up on the website afterwards. So don't be taking lots of notes because you will be able to watch this back afterwards. The resource will be there to share with colleagues and counterparts in the sector. Just to help with a smooth running of the event, we are asking that you just keep your microphone and your camera off during the presentations. Whenever it comes to the Q&A at the end, do feel free, if you have your virtual hand up, to put on your camera and to turn on your mic so that we can hear and see you. But during the presentations, as I say, if you could just keep those off, that would just help with people's bandwidth. If you've got questions throughout the training session, don't wait until the end. You can throw them into the chat pane and they can be captured there, and then we'll come to them in due course. And as I said earlier, don't be afraid to raise your virtual hand and we'll bring you into the meeting. So then just moving on to the running order, we've got quite a bit to cover, but I think we're going to go through it in quite a pace. So we're going to look first of all at the Greenspace NI Map recap, just to give you some context in case you're not familiar with Greenspace NI Map. We're going to talk about then using GreenspaceNI and ArcGIS Online, and then how you can edit and add data to the map. And then we'll switch then to talking about using the map in ArcPro, looking at good practice for geometry and attributes, and then we'll finish off with a Q&A session. So we're sort of imagining this session will last between an hour and 15. So just let me give you some background, and I might also ask if Maya Taylor has joined the call. If Maya, if you want to come in and maybe just give a little bit of the background behind why this project was important to DERA and something that DERA wanted to fund in terms of the wider priorities around access to nature and the outdoors.
Yeah, so the important thing, thanks Elizabeth, was to find a way to show exactly what we have across Northern Ireland, and therefore to be able to identify where gaps are for people to interact with the natural environment, for exercise, for health, for all the benefits that there are. We have knowledge in our heads, but for funders and for strategy makers. Oh, there's somebody just needs to go on mute.
Yeah, I think someone needs to go on mute there. We're getting a wee bit of disturbance coming through. Sorry, Maya.
Actually far too similar to
Is it shame? There we go. So the cross-government strategic outdoor recreation group, had discussed this, and we'd be working with Outdoor Recreation NI, so now Outscape, for many, many years on the sort of initial concept around this. But as tech has moved on, the ability has moved on, and it became possible, and so we and Department for Infrastructure were able to find the funding, and Outscape was able to use that to very good effect to create what I hope everybody will find very useful for the future.
Thank you, Maya. Yes, so I think it's important to give you your flowers, Maya and Dara, and DFI for the funding that has enabled this project to happen on behalf of the Strategic Outdoor Recreation Group for Northern Ireland. Just to go back there, Emma, let me cover off a few things around the purpose of it. So it is a really important mapping resource for us to have, and it does relate to key policy. So one of the things that we have been able to work on in conjunction with key government departments is around this really important target of seeing an annual increase in the number of households within 400 metres of publicly accessible green space or off-road trails. And that's something that's being measured already and monitored within the Northern Ireland Environment Statistics Report. And it's also within the draft environment strategy and something that we're pushing for within other government strategies as well. And the second purpose there is for it to be used. So we want public bodies, community groups, we want landowners to be using it to shape the future of our green spaces. And as you'll see in a few moments' time, there's lots of analyses that you can undertake to develop lots of really interesting insights. And this helps to inform planning, it helps to inform resource allocation going forward, and primarily sort of around understanding provision gaps and where in Northern Ireland we are seeing underserved communities in relation to provision of green space. And then the GreenspaceNI Map, it is available on different platforms, so Spatial NI, Open Data NI, and for consumers, we're pulling across some of the trails and the venues onto Outmore NI. So just moving along then to looking at what's actually in the map. So next slide, Emma. Thank you. So in terms of what's in the map, we've got green space and trails. And you can see on the left-hand side there a screen grab of the map at the Northern Ireland level. So we've got all types of publicly accessible natural green space. And that includes things like amenity green space. So that's like your public open space, your playing fields that are porous and more natural, heritage sites. Includes parks and gardens, such as public parks, heritage parks and gardens, includes all our woodlands and forests, nature reserves, and open country such as mountains with public access and coastline. It's also got our trails, our off-road trails across Northern Ireland. So that includes our walking trails, our public rights of way, our cycling trails, multi-use trails, and mountain biking trails. So it's really, really comprehensive. It's the first comprehensive map that captures all of Northern Ireland's trails and green space. And there you can see in terms of off-road trails, we've got over 1,700 miles captured. And this, being able to capture the quantity of green space and trails is important. As I said, it goes back to that first purpose of being able to monitor an increase, hopefully, of provision across Northern Ireland. And of course, the GreenspaceNI Map couldn't have been made without all our partners and collaborators. And you can see there the logos of 30 organisations who have been invaluable in terms of providing data and helping us to augment that data. So thank you to all of you. I know some of you are on the call today. So moving on then, just to quickly recap on the first workshop. So back in, I think, in the autumn time, we had like a beginner's session, and that was around looking at the data and the applications that are available to the public. Today's session is different, it's much more advanced, and it does require access to ArcGIS, whereas the session that we delivered in the autumn time was more around looking at the two applications that are available to the public, and that's the map viewer and the dashboard. And there's QR codes there that you can use to go and have a look at those if you haven't done so yet. In that training event, we took people, particularly we had lots of community groups who were on the call, and small organisations. So we took them through such features within the map viewer, like looking at layer options, how they can undertake statistical analysis, and with these kind of more basic tools, the interactive tools that are at hand for planning infrastructure. So lots of use cases. And then in terms of dashboard features, we looked at how they can do some statistical analysis, develop their own pie charts, filter functions, etc. And that allows them to cross-tab with things around deprivation, understanding accessibility of green space to where people live. So those were some of the features that we introduced that are kind of more at these kind of, I suppose, early access level platforms. And we also showed on the dashboard how there's a feedback system, which means that if a member of the public or a community group notices something that's inaccurate on the map or some missing data, they can suggest improvements to that. So that was really useful training, but as I say, today really builds on that and it's much more advanced. So today you'll obviously get the training from Emma and John, but it's not the end, and the GreenspaceNI Map continues to grow and to develop. So these are under sort of two areas. One is around training on data analysis and outputs, and then the other one is around adding useful data. So we've delivered the map viewer and dashboard training. We have, and we continue to work with our data suppliers to add and edit additional data. And really today is kind of a key component of enabling that. And analysing the impact of green space and trails is obviously going to be ongoing. And every year we look at updating that statistical figure around the 400-metre measure that we have for Northern Ireland. So we will be updating that soon for the Northern Ireland Environment Statistics Report. And then, of course, to make the map really useful going forward, it's important that we continue to add and to improve the data within it. So one of the things is making sure that we've got access points for all green space and trails. The access points is really important because you can't always access green space through it anyway. Often you have to go to the actual access points. So that does mean that maybe you have longer travel times, walking times to actually get to green space, and therefore it impacts in terms of measuring distance and proximity. So we've got the access points for all green spaces done, but we do need your help to get the access points for trails completed, and Emma will touch on that later. We want to develop an NI blue space layer. We've got one component of that complete, which is the beaches layer, but again, there's further work to do there, and we'll be coming to our stakeholders to ask for support in that. And then going forward, you know, this map is not only useful in terms of helping us understand the quantity of green space and trails across Northern Ireland, but also to understand the quality and accessibility. And so we want to add in additional data. And again, we will be reliant on our partners and collaborators to help us formulate ways of putting in data that helps us actually understand the quality of green spaces and the accessibility and the accessible features of those green spaces and trails. And what that allows us to do is not only sort of take kind of more of a broad brush analysis, but to actually look down and look at different demographic groups and understand the types of green space that they have close to them, how safe it is, how attractive it is, how nature rich it is, the amenities they have, etc., and how accessible they are. And then another component, and the final one there, is around our consumer website, OutMoreNI. So we'll be adding additional venues, and we've undertaken a survey online, and the consumers across Northern Ireland want more information and more venues on forests and woodlands, parks, beaches, and nature reserves. So those are kind of like the four big ones that they want more venues and more information on OutMoreNI. So that'll be something again that we'll be coming back to our partners to help get information on, to give the correct information on that website. So without further ado, as you hear, I've got a croaky voice, perhaps like many of you on the call today. I'm going to hand over to Emma, who's our GIS technician on the project, and to John Hewitt from Geolytical, and they will take you through the training.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. I don't want to keep you for too long today. I'm going to give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour of using the GreenspaceNI Map within ArcGIS Online. So As Elizabeth said, this session will require access to ArcGIS Online. For those that don't have access, we do have our public resources, as we mentioned earlier. In the first training workshop, we went through how to use these. So if you don't have access to ArcGIS Online, please have a look at those, and any further questions, come back to myself. The session is being recorded, so if I'm talking a bit too fast, you will get the recording at a later date, so you can go back and catch up on anything you missed out on. So for those of you that are aware of ArcGIS Online, I've created a group called the GreenspaceNI community. So this does require a login, and some of you will have noticed that you got an invite to join this group from me yesterday. So this is your go-to place for all GreenspaceNI data. So you'll see in there we have web maps, we have all the layers and all the resources, the dashboard and the map viewer in there as well. We also have these new layers, which are our edit layers. So bear with me and I will take you through how to integrate this into your system. So this is the usual landing page for signing into your ArcGIS Online. So I'm going to sign in under this user, GreenspaceNI. And it brings me into ArcGIS Online. Once I'm in the groups, you'll see here, this is the group that I mentioned, the GreenspaceNI community group. If I view the details, it shows us this landing page with the featured content. So these are the layers that I've mentioned, all the edit layers and the live published layers. And we can see up here in the content tab is all the rest of the data as well. So you can see there's our feedback survey, as Elizabeth had mentioned, the dashboard, the map viewer, and also our story map is in there as well. So I'm just going to show you today how you can use this resource to help us make the Greenspace map as accurate and as good as it possibly can be. So this is our editor web map. Once you go in here, you have full control to edit the edit layers within the map. So we don't want to give full access to the published layers. We wanted to create sort of a holding area for data. So this is where the edit layers come in. Anything that you add into the edit layers will be verified that it's suitable to be inputted into the GreenspaceNI map and then published into the live version. So you can see here, the edit layers are clean, empty layers. This is not a mistake. I know John had flagged this to me yesterday, but this was intentional, just to help us with making the process of publishing the data a bit smoother. So I don't have to look through thousands of polygons to see the ones that you've added in. If you do want to see the live layers, however, you can just click in here and click this icon, makes the layer visible, and you can turn it on and off. Same with the access points and also the off-road trails layers. So these layers, have full control to move them about in whatever way you want. You can change the order of them, you can change the symbology of these ones as well. You have full control for editing on this. So I'm just going to show you quickly how to add data. So say I want to go in here and if I want to edit a green space, I can go in to the green space that's published. I go into my edit layer, I click in the edit tab down the side here. You can see there's lots of different options and you can change the filters, you can change the effects, all of this is available to you. So I wish to edit the polygon here, so I click on this and I can digitize anything. I recommend that you turn on, if you're wishing to edit a published polygon, I recommend you turn on snapping features. This just allows you to edit what's already there to maybe a different geometry. So I'll turn those layers on, and you can see here, gives me control. I say I want to make this polygon go on down further here. Some of you will already know this, and I know I'm preaching to the converted in some cases, but I'm aware that some of you might not understand how to do this, so bear with me, those who are aware. So once I have my polygon, my new polygon digitized, these options then will come up. So just as a matter of some good practice, I would really appreciate if when you are digitizing data that you fill in as much information in these fields as possible. Obviously the name of the site, so this is the same across all the layers, the polygons, the points, and the trails. The name, the source, so this can be your organization. For these fields, we do have drop-down options. Self-explanatory, there is definitions available on the Outscape website for what each of these sites is, and then also the type. Some other fields that are useful for us, whether or not there's paid access to a site, if you know the area or know how to calculate. If not, I can fill that in at a later date. Another useful field for us is the show on map field. This allows us in the publish layer to remove data immediately by clicking show on map to know. So this is very useful to allow me to see what should be published and what shouldn't be published, as well as any other notes that you wish to leave for myself or any other data. And then once the layer is live, I can click it to published. So it's important that I'll just add in some attributes here. It's important once you add this and add all your data that you click create. Otherwise, all your hard work will be in vain because it'll just disappear. So once you click create, that is your new polygon added. Greenspace access points is the same process. You can go to the edit tab, click on the layer you wish to edit, and add in your point and your attributes. One useful one on this one is the Greenspace ID. So if you've put a number in for your polygon, I just ask that you put it into the access point layer also, just to help us keep tabs on things. And once again, fill in your attributes and don't forget to click create. There's been many a time I've put in lots of hard work creating polygons and adding attributes and forgot to click the create button. And then you have to go back and do the whole thing again. Same goes for trails. Into the edit tab, click on your trails layer and digitize your line and add in your attributes. Other options we have in here, so you've full control over all these. You can change the base map. So at the minute we're on the OpenStreetMap. There's also the OSNI Fusion maps. So you can see how to change those. You can also access the Living Atlas for additional base maps. I know some of you might be more aware of these than others, but there's plenty of options in there. We also have, just as a useful resource, there is the legend, so you can see what each of those layers is from there. And once you have finished and you've added all your data in, it's also very important that you don't forget to save. So you can save the map. like so, and that is it updated, and the updates will come through to myself then. Good point to note that I won't be checking this every day, so I will not always know if there's new data in. So I'd appreciate if you also just maybe drop me an email or send me a note to say if you have added any additional data in, or if there's anything you wish to inform me about. For those that want to add some more information in, you can add any of your own layers into this map. So if we go into my organization, so this is just through the Outscape ArcGIS Online. So say I want to add in some additional layers. Such as the built heritage designations. I can add this in. You can see that appears on the map also. Any of your organizational content, for those that have their personal ArcGIS account linked to the Greenspace group, you'll be able to view all the content through this and add anything from your organization into this web map. And that is how you can help us through that. You can also then download this web map to your ArcGIS Pro. This is just useful for adding in bigger volumes of data. So if I download into my folders and click on the downloaded, it will then open within ArcGIS Pro. This is good for appending data. So if you have a large layer of access points, for example, you can put them straight into the access point layer through this format, rather than having to digitize over and over again. Some of you will be aware of this, but I'll just quickly show you how this works. Normally takes a wee minute just to download and load all the data through. If there's any questions at any stage during this, please feel free to drop them into the chat pane. There will be time for questions at the end, so we will look after you all then. So here you can see the layers have pulled through just the same as they are in the web map. So if I wish to append some access points, I go into my geoprocessing tab and I'll search for append. So I can input any, obviously you have to add the layer in from your own personal files first, and input it then into, just show you through this, into the target data set, which will be the access points. Add the attributes afterwards as well if required, and click run, and this should then pull through. That might just take a wee minute or two to load. I'll just show with you then some good practice for adding in attributes. So as I mentioned, these categories and types are within drop-down options in all of the layers that are available. So in the access points, the polygons for green spaces and the trails layers all will have drop-down options just to make your lives a wee bit easier. So you can see how these follow across. So you can have your parks and gardens as your categories, and then within this we can have historic parks and gardens and public parks. Same for the public open spaces, playing fields and heritage sites will all fall under amenity green space. You'll see from those layers that I showed you that there is lots of attributes, and I don't want you to be afraid. They're not all essential. The essential ones are that we have a name, your source, and the category and type. Anything else I can fill in the area, and all can be calculated by myself. For the green spaces and the green space access points, the trails attributes are slightly different, and you can see there how to fill those in. They're much easier than Greenspace. There's a lot less information required, and obviously there is notes options, so anything that you wish to add, any additional things that you think are useful, please fill that in as well. But it's not complicated, and I will obviously send you the slides through afterwards as well, so you'll be able to see what should go where and how to fill the slides in. I think that's all from me on using the online resources. So I like to hand over now to John, and he's going to show you how to, hopefully going to show you how to integrate with QGIS.
Thanks, Emma. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Hello, everybody. Lovely to see so many friends on the call. I was given a very fun challenge actually for this, which was some integration with QGIS. So hopefully, are you seeing my screen? Are you seeing a map? The thing I say in every meeting. Great. Thanks for the nods. So there's a really interesting thing happened at the end of 2022 with QGIS. It used to be that you had to create a separate feature service, an OGC compliant WFS feature service to be able to edit from QGIS into ArcGIS Online. That changed in a recent release of QGIS, so now you can edit directly ArcGIS Online feature services. So we thought this would be a handy thing to show, and just a generally handy thing I think to show, but also we've created links into the Greenspace layers to let you do this from QGIS, and we've created a little guide for anyone who uses QGIS and is interested, and we'll send to you on exactly how to do it, because you might not be surprised by this, but this is a very, very poorly documented feature. It doesn't seem to be much out there at all. So on my QGIS screen, what I have here is let me see. I'll just show you, by the way, for interest, a little thing here. It is basically all the same base maps that you can get within the likes of ArcGIS Pro. It's typical with open source software. It's kind of slightly different. You run a little Python script to make all those appear, basically. But what I have here is some links in my ArcGIS REST services directory into exactly the same services that Emma was showing. So maybe if I go over to this screen, which is the same web map that Emma was using there, it might just be interesting to show you exactly what we did at the back end to make this happen. So basically there are a couple of steps. We created a secure application link in the ArcGIS Online with a client ID and a secret, which is something that then we will share with you to be able to connect QGIS to this. Then we take the likes of these feature services and they link into the feature service, which is down here, and connect that to QGIS. So if I open up my Greenspace area layer in here, you can see how this looks. You can actually see the groups in ArcGIS Online as well. It's quite nice, as well as the services themselves. So if I click on the service, let me see, I just click on this one here and we'll edit the connection just to show you how this is set up. And as I say, we have a document on how to do this. Basically, you enter that link I just showed you there with a few other sort of standard ArcGIS Online links. There's a little bit of security setup to do, which looks totally mad, but isn't at all. A lot of these are just standard things that we have in the documentation, what to put in with the client ID and the secret that we have there. So that's how you set up the connection. And then basically you can directly edit these feature services. So if I click toggle editing, just to turn on edits on this layer, I've gone to the area in Carrickfergus here. And if I then click up here, that'll let me create a polygon. So if I create a new area, Greenspace in Carrick, then it's popped up when I complete the polygon with some fields that I can add. So if I just put my name on it, we can put in the source, the category, which is it's pulling from ArcGIS Online, whether it's paid access or not. and then click OK, and then save my edits over here. And then when I pop over to the ArcGIS Online, or to the ArcGIS Online web map that Emma was showing, and I zoom out a little bit, then there's my polygon appeared. And you don't know how happy it's made me to see that polygon there. That's always really nice when it works too. But I found this really quite a nice thing to set up, just for the fun of it, but also the fact that I think having a truly hybrid environment now between Esri and QGIS is totally realistic, you know, with the fact that this integration works so nicely. Even if I went to delete this, so if I just select this, this polygon now as well, and just get rid of it, delete my feature and save these edits as well, and then zoom out, then it'll disappear from ArcGIS Online too. So it's a really quite, you know, fast and easy integration between the two. And as I say, we've created a document on how to do exactly what I've shown you here, how to set it up. Yeah, and that's it. And I think at that stage, my part today was very quick and easy, but incredibly good fun to set up. So hopefully that's useful. And feel free to reach out if anyone has any queries on this. It's a pretty recent integration, and it's a really nice one as well. So on that point, I'll stop sharing and hand back to you, Emma.
That's great. Thank you very much, John. As John said, there will be plenty of resources after this session today that we'll send out to you all. And this isn't a secret. You know, we can share these on with colleagues or other people that will find it useful. So please feel free to do that. I'll also put together or have put together a user guide for what I've explained. So that will also be shared with you afterwards. I think we've got some questions, Elizabeth, in the chat pane there. So I have nothing else to show, and I don't think John has done his bit. So maybe just field some questions then.
Yep, so just while we are waiting to see if there's any sort of questions coming from the floor, we've got a couple of questions in the chat pane. So just going back to the ArcGIS Online. Michael Savage, can you copy the feature from the main layer into the edit layer? Handy if you have a complex polygon.
I can take that one. Yes, you can do exactly that, Michael. You can do, I suppose, probably the easiest way is even a copy and paste. If you had it within an existing layer locally, then you can do a copy, and you can do a paste special, I think it's called, in ArcGIS Pro, and then merge the attributes in, even if they're different, into the target layer. So yeah, that's totally possible. Okay,
that seems pretty straightforward. Andrew Boyd has a question. He says, it's been a while since I've appended data to the field columns. So do you have to match the target Greenspace layers exactly?
I'll take this one for appending the data. I did show you very quickly there, but there's a few options for matching the field types. So you can input fields must match the target fields. You can use the field map to reconcile field differences, or you can skip them. I always use the field map to reconcile the differences. It allows you to edit what fields are feeding which fields. So no is the answer. They don't have to match exactly.
Okay, that's super news, Emma. I'm sure lots of people are relieved. So Dwayne has said that the data that we use for the Greenspace polygons wasn't provided by the council, and that's true. We've used other data sets there for the city. It seems now that the council has the data available for upload. So Dwayne, I might just get Emma to follow up with you separately on that, on the best way to upload your own data. That'd be perfect. Emma Wilson has a really good question. So you have shown us how to edit and amend an existing polygon, but if we need to completely remove a polygon, if a parcel of land has been either sold or had change of use and should no longer be included, what is the best way to do this?
I would advise that you do the same process of adding in a new polygon. It doesn't have to be exactly what the existing one is, but if you set within the attributes then that it is show on map is no, I will know that this polygon has to be removed. And maybe also put in a wee note in the notes field just to say change of use remove from layer. I'll be able to make those changes as necessary.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the audience amongst us? Anybody want to raise your virtual hand and come in with a query that you have or a particular scenario you want to run through? And just while we're waiting for that, I wonder, Emma, could you just maybe give a bit more detail around how exactly people can add in the access points for trails? And do you have any sort of timeline you'd want to share in terms of when you want councils and other landowners to be doing that?
Yeah, well, I think that's our big next step, which will help us to make the analysis a lot more accurate. So at the minute, we've to measure proximity to trails, we've used shape preserving buffers, which has worked pretty well, but we can definitely make it more accurate. And the way that we're going to do this is by adding in the access points. So within the web map, there is a layer called trail access points. The same process as I showed, just for adding them in, which will really help us. So whether it's another call or another chat, if you need with me, I would be happy to help you. But I think if we get those in within the next, before summer, and within the next couple of months, we'll be able to run another analysis and get some updated proximity figures using access points and service areas for all green spaces and off-road trails, which will create a lovely layer. And I think John would agree that that would be a really nice data set and a really nice analysis to have under our belts. So I'd really appreciate any help that you'd be willing to give on that. Otherwise, it'd be a long time of me sitting here or wandering around all the trails in Northern Ireland, collecting the access points manually. As well as this, obviously, we want to keep the map as accurate and as up to date as possible. So if there is any updates to the layers, I encourage you to add that in or update your layers as soon as possible as well, preferably before we run another analysis, just so that we can obviously continue to improve the accuracy of the data within the map.
And I think, Emma, you will be communicating with folk in terms of when you would like them to ideally update their data.
Yeah.
I'm going to give one last chance for any hands up from the floor. But in the meantime, Emma, can you just give a bit more information? So obviously we've been able to hand out some Esri licenses, and we do have a few more up for grabs. Now, most people in this call, your organisation already does have access to ArcGIS, but do you want to give any information just in terms of those available licenses that we do have and who they are most suited for? So just in case any people sort of know of organisations or community groups that would make best use of those, have the information.
Yep. So prior to this training event today, I'd put out a call for anybody to send me a short application from community groups or organisations that would like an additional licence. So these licences have very kindly been funded by DERA and by DFI, which will allow community groups or councils that don't have access to ArcGIS to be provided with a licence. The licence will run until January 2025 and will give you access to everything that I've shown you today on ArcGIS Online. So you'll have full access to the map, you'll have full access to all the edit layers, all the resources, and also I'll be on hand to support you if required. You also have access to all the training resources and all of the webinars. Now, I don't want to offend anybody's technical capabilities, but for some, it might just be more appropriate to use the resources that are open and online, so the dashboard and the map viewer. These resources, these applications have great data. There's analysis layers in there, all can be viewed in the last training session. But for anybody who is pretty tech savvy and would like to interrogate the data a bit more and maybe even create their own layers or create their own web maps, please get in contact with me or point them in my direction. I can take any questions and review any applications, and hopefully provide more people with licenses and access. Community groups are often in a great place. They know their area very well, and they know every hole in the hedge, and be able to tell us any areas that are missing or any data that should or indeed shouldn't be included in the map. So if you do know of anybody, please point them in my direction, and I'm happy to have a chat with them.
Thanks, Emma. I know you're always on hand to help our partners, which is great. Dwayne, I see you've got your hand up, so if you want to turn on your camera and your microphone.
Yeah. So my question is just, is the 2 hectare stipulation still applicable?
For the analysis, yes, we're still using all green spaces over 2 hectares for analysis, but I'll happily accept any green spaces into the map. It's just any smaller ones will be filtered out before we run the analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dwayne. David asks, is the session being recorded? Yes, this session has been recorded, David, and what we will do, as Emma has said, is we'll produce sort of a nice package afterwards that will go out to everyone that's got both the beginner training session and this more advanced one. So you've got all the resources in kind of a one-stop shop fashion. Maya, your hand is up.
Yeah, I guess just following that 2 hectare question, I guess it is quite useful to have other sizable or useful bits of land that will help us consider, like, all collectively where community path networks will be and where new routes, etc., could be. So that's just to feed that in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, Emma, we've been collecting, well, I know you say that you're open to any size of green space, but we've certainly been collecting anything 0.5 hectares and above. So we do have those smaller parcels of green spaces and trails. And you're right, Maya, I think going forward, it's seeing how we connect these often together to maximise the accessibility to communities. Teresa O'Hare, hands up. You can turn on your microphone and your camera.
I'm not turning on the camera. I'm having a bad hair day.
That's all right, Teresa. I can understand that. I have those too.
But yes, the mic's on. And yeah, so the bit about the paths is one that I haven't quite got the connection between it, and forgive me for my ignorance on that minimum space. So if we're adding in green lanes, for example, into that, which are essentially public rights of way, how are you wanting us to calculate that in hectares? Because, you know, if we have a green lane that's, you know, only say 4 miles long, how are we going to calculate that space, given that the lane is probably an old cart lane? And, you know, as a single track in most places. Some of them are genuinely pedestrian and much, much smaller, would be like, as country people call, an ass pass. So a bit of guidance on that would be really useful. Thanks.
Yep. We are collecting the trails through lines rather than polygons. So the polygons are your area, and the lines are just an A to B. So the hectareage isn't calculated for the lines. They are calculated by miles. So you don't need to worry about that. And I also should note that you don't really need to worry about the length in general, because that's something that I can calculate once the data has been added in. But thank you very much for your question.
Yeah, I just kind of just come back on that, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just some of them. I appreciate that it's access to green space. I just wonder, is there a usefulness, because some of these lanes that I have in our area and that Mourne Heritage, you know, is involved in managing, they have substantial walls. Some of them have substantial stone walls which have a girth of anything up to 1.5 meters in places. So when you take that and the size of the trail or the cart pass on both sides, you actually have quite a substantial area, which in effect becomes very useful green space as opposed to just a trail. So do you want that kind of information as well? Do you want that kind of data, that if there's sections of it that actually are almost like a habitat in their own right?
For the minute, I would say that we keep trails to be in just lines. I know I've had this conversation about the towpath, for example. At the minute, the Lagan towpath is in the Greenspace map as just a line. It could well be added in as a Greenspace polygon. But we haven't got to that stage yet. So for now, we're going to keep the trails as lines and green spaces as those bigger polygon areas.
I guess, Teresa,
that
might be something that will be useful, you know, when 30 by 30 is being mapped for nature recovery networks, etc. Whereas this is very much about people and their access to the green space.
Great. No, that's okay. It's just when we're doing it, it's just, we might just collect that information, you know, ourselves as part of that process. But I get it on just the linear markings. That's grand. Lovely. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Just on that, I think it does tie into another project that we have just kick-started, which is the accessible natural green space standards for Northern Ireland. So we're currently scoping what other countries have in terms of green space standards. And once we have that report produced, the next step of that is then to go out and to develop in consultation with stakeholders like yourselves, a set of standards that are relevant to Northern Ireland. So again, just watch that space for that development, and it does feed into this in terms of working out, well, what size and length is appropriate in terms of a trail or a green space, and the proximity as well in terms of at the minute we have the 400-metre measure, but during that consultation process we may want to make that a bit more nuanced to take into consideration urban, peri-urban, rural areas, etc. So there's going to be a whole work programme around that to look out for. Michael Savage says there, I have used a rough 10-metre width rule for green space trail split. So yes, there are certain ways that we can make assumptions around the general width of trails, but I suppose going forward it'd be like access points, it'd be great to have these things all ground truth as well. Are there any other questions, reflections? Oh, we have another one in from David. So is there a case for a linear park category? I'm not quite sure. Maybe Emma, do you understand the nature of the question, or do we want David to come in?
David, are you referring to the example I gave there of the Lagan towpath that's currently in as a trail, but is very possibly a linear park?
I think he is. He's given a thumbs up there, Emma.
Yeah. Potentially, yes. Although I like to keep life as easy as possible. And for somebody to digitize the whole of the Lagan towpath for the purpose of Greenspace Map, as Maya said, there's a case for nature recovery networks, definitely. But for the case of Greenspace Map, I want to keep all our lives as easy as possible. Keep trails as trails and green spaces as green spaces for now, anyway.
Okay, thanks, Emma. Any takers for any more questions? Maya Taylor, perhaps a question for WalkNI, Outmore and I? Well, that's true, yes, in terms of how we show that to the users or to the visitors of trails and venues. I think that's something that we could consider. Okie dokie. Right, well, I'm going to hand over to Emma because Emma's going to be the next person you're going to hear from in terms of taking this all forward and getting the ball rolling in terms of getting more data into the maps. So Emma, can I hand over to you to do the wrap up?
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you for your help today in the webinar, and to John as well. Thank you for your input, and Maya also for giving us the funders' perspective on the project. So thank you all very much. I sort of sidelined you all into helping me with this today, so thanks for doing that. As Elizabeth said, I will be in touch with you all in the near future. One thing I forgot to mention, if anybody here today has access to ArcGIS Online and hasn't provided me with their username, just drop me it in an email or send me it over whenever, and I can connect you into that GreenspaceNI user group on ArcGIS Online. I think that's all for now. Today I will send you out the resources from the webinar, and I will also be in touch about the next steps and the next information and the next data that I'm going to be pestering you about. We're not gonna let Greenspace be swept aside. It's a very useful resource, and we want to keep it accurate, want to keep it current, and want to keep it relevant. And you're all a big part of that. So thank you so much for your help so far, and thank you so much for your help in the future, and for your attendance today.
All right, thank you all. And as Emma says, we will be in touch.